Hi, my name is Kelly Francis, and this is my presentation on tort liability. What is tort? Tort is an actionable or civil wrong committed against one person by another. It usually falls within two categories of intentional or unintentional. And to explain what intentional is, it's the deliberate act that may or not be accompanied by malice, which could include several factors of mental distress, false imprisonment, trespassing on personal property, assault, battery, libel, defamation, those sorts of things. And then there's unintentional, which is perpetrated by someone who fails to exercise the degree of care, what is permissible. And that goes with negligence, the standard of care, breach of duty, proximity, or legal cause, and injury. A few court cases that I found with tort was Frame, and I believe this is French Como. It's where a student, Frame, was asked to leave after becoming disruptive in class. He was asked twice but refused to leave. So the substitute teacher, Como, who was also the science teacher for that school, was substituting for another teacher, came over, did grab the student by the arm and removed him, and the motion threw the student off balance where he ended up falling into a podium and then into the blackboard. And so he was Kamal's actions were constituted as an assault and battery on him. However, it was found that his actions were justified as to help retain and maintain order in the classroom. After the incident, some reactives, I would discuss the incident with both parties, with parents and student. I would discuss it also with the teacher involved. Review of student expectations and conduct would be in order. Doing that during announcements or during an assembly, or sometime just to remind students that school is a place where they are learning and that they need to not hinder the learning of other students as well. Review professional conduct with the teacher. I don't know that it's always professional to ever grab a student like that. I'm assuming it was a very physical, under the arm, come with me kind of thing. I personally have physically taken a student with both hands on the shoulders and said, okay, I need you to stand here, sort of thing, but never really forceful or jerking motion for a student. Because it did go to court, be possible administrative leave for that teacher until things were settled. Proactive could be during professional developments, discuss behavior management strategies with faculty and staff. Reminders of students, throughout the year, behavior, what's expected of them, posters on the wall, maybe assemblies, going and talking during lunch, just casually saying, remember, this is a place of learning, that we don't need to be hindering other students' learning, and have more of an administrator presence during periods where there are substitute teachers. I think would be extremely helpful for the substitutes, even though the sub in this case was a teacher who was covering for another teacher. That happens a lot in our district. We cover a lot of in-house, so expectations are given. Me personally, I have expectations for my students. My rule is when I'm gone and there's a guest teacher, that any negative note results in a detention. And my students know this, and I rarely have bad notes coming back. My second one is Flanagan versus Canton. Flanagan was injured and pushed by another student after a gym class that resulted in a splenectomy. The teacher, who normally accompanies the students to the locker room. Didn't at this time because he was talking to another student about their behavior, and Flanagan unfortunately was injured when another student pushed him. This case was brought to court, and the court ultimately did side with Flanagan for reasons that the teachers should have been with the other students because they were already acting out. Reactive for this case, discuss the importance of supervision. It's always important. The student that was being talked to could have been talked to after class. It could have waited. I don't know that this would result in an administrative leave. But, unfortunately, a student was hurt. And so proactively constantly remind faculty and staff, through email, professional development, that it's important to supervise kids because they're kids. You never know what is going to happen. Stress that safety comes first, discipline second. If the student needs to be talked to, they can either talk after class, an excuse note can be written and sent, or a detention be given. So if it's not a dire need, then the student that needs to be talked to can wait. You can always tell the student, wait after class. I need to speak with you after class, or I will need to see you after school, sort of things. And even if it is after school, maybe it is just a talking to, sort of. So it's stress, the importance of supervision. My third one, Mitchell versus Cedar Rapids Community School District, where a 14-year-old student was raped off school property when she skipped school. The school relied on computerized attendance, and so there were steps that really weren't taken. Being a SPED student, normally parents would have been called, but Mitchell, the parent, never received a call. Reactive was, an unexcused policy needs to be revised. If they're especially a SPED student it stated that she had a low IQ, ones that constantly being monitored. If that student has disappeared, action needs to be taken. And from what I've read, there was no action taken. Parent had no idea that the student skipped class. Even though attendance is computerized, a call to the office needs to be made and further action taken. You might mark them unexcused. In my district, we use Power School, which everything's computerized online. And, our district is very good our secretary is very good about calling parents and saying, student's not here, what's going on? I work in the middle school. We have very little of unexcused absences in the middle of the day. Kids, we don't have anywhere for kids really to skip. They can't jump in a car and go driving, 20 miles to the bigger city. We're lucky that way. But administration needs to be notified, and an on-site resource officer needs to be notified as well that the student is missing. If it was a high schooler, the ones who have cars, did they go home? Where are they at? That way parents can be notified. The proactive teachers taking attendance need to be aware of policy. There needs to be a policy of unexcused absences. If there's an unexcused absence, a phone call to the office needs to be made. If the office is made aware, then an email needs to go out saying this student has an unexcused absence, so on and so forth, letting their other teachers know that yes, we are aware that the student is missing. Administration is on it. A follow-up with parents is an absolute must that needs to be taken. Parents need to know where their child is at. If their child is not at school, they need to be notified. And so policies need to be set up to have parents informed when their child is missing or not at school. My fourth one is Johnson versus School District of Millard. A first grade class was taught how to play London Bridge. After instructions were given, students were allowed to play on their own. Johnson was caught and was rocked too harshly by fellow students and was accidentally thrown into a bookshelf, resulting in a cut above his right eye and 50 stitches. Teacher was in the room, but was said that her back was to the students or that she was helping other students. So this one's kind of a hard one. The reactive discuss important about monitoring students during activities. When you have a first grade class, they're 6, 7 years old. They're still hyper. They're still running around. You need to be hyper vigilant of what they're doing. Discussion of an aid or younger classes during that aid for younger classes needs to be discussed with the board, in my opinion. Proactive to ensure teachers and staff know the importance of monitoring students, even in your classroom. I know, you set them free to let them do their, work together and whatnot, and sometimes things do get out of hand, especially with the younger kids. For future times, the possibility of hiring a part-time aide for music with the younger classes, or, maybe hiring an extra para for strictly music, or something to help give that teacher some help. Or maybe I'd hate to cut back on some of the activities that they would do within a music class, but if that's something that's hard to monitor, then maybe that's something that doesn't need to happen in that classroom. My final one is Barrett versus USD number 259 and Dan Johnson, in which a high school football player attended football practice. The beginning of the day started with 85-degree weather. As the morning progressed, it got hotter. They took a break, 45-minute break for water and to kind of cool down. Then they went into drills. Afterwards, during drills, the student Alex complained about not feeling well. The assistant coach and the head coach both gave him time to go grab water, and he went back to practice right after. When drills were completed, he collapsed, sent to the hospital, and the next day he died. Parents sued for negligence, but was not found that the injury was not caused by a condition or recreational property. So, they weren't held for negligence. But reactive to this, there were changes within the Kansas High School Athletic Association, KSHA, for heat-related illnesses. School policy would be changed on warm weather days. The hotter it gets, maybe practice needs to be moved inside. Maybe film needs to be watched instead when it starts reaching higher. Maybe practice is shortened. Longer water. Policies to help in place allow for cool down breaks inside or something different. A proactive could. I know that being a coach, there's training videos for student athletes. These days we have to talk about heat-related illnesses and concussions. Those are some required for students to watch before they are even allowed to touch a ball. Training for coaches to recognize the symptoms of injuries or illnesses, being heat-related or others, and allowing the students, again, to take a break for water, take a break to rest, to kind of cool down. Moving to places where there's air conditioning, having your student athletes talk to the coaches. So those are my 5 court cases on tort liability.